Hello and welcome back to video 3 of the IPControl 16 evaluation video series. And this will be video 3 for the API specifically. And I thought I'd do kind of a short, we'll see how short this turns into, a short video on accessing data specifically in the API and doing searches, exports, imports of data from user-definable fields. And this is something that we use often. And the way that this works particularly is you have within the user-defined field, you have a display name, which is again how this appears in the web interface. And then you have a field name tag. And this field name tag is literally the way we store the data in the database table. And this is where the data tag is. So when we make references to it in the API, or we make references into the CLI and others, we're referring to this field name tag and not the display tag. Now, once a field is created in different values, text, lists, drop-down buttons, URLs, and so on, you're then going to have the ability to create the field and apply it to one or many templates. Create once, build many. Real simple and works great. Now, but the thing about it is when you get to your child blocks, you might have information templates that are going to have specific fields. And let's go ahead and take a look at the block VLAN fields. And here I have a field, I think it's VLAN ID. I'm going to go verify it. I may have changed it. But VLAN name, state, and I've got a number of things. And one of those special fields I particularly use when I'm going in and out of subnets. And those are for which subnets are automated. And I have a field, API enabled. So API underscore enabled, because I do everything in the underscore, lowercase underscore. And then it has a checkbox, so it has a value of equals single quote on single quote. So effectively, I want the ability then to be able to go in and I want to say, even without the containers, I simply want to do status, well, I'm just going to do this anyway, status equals subnet. And when we refer to the UDF, we use all caps, the word UDF dot, and now we want to use our field name tag. So I want to use in this regard. And so this, I hope, should give me all of the subnets that have API equals enabled equals on of status equals subnet, which is in use deployed. Now, I don't think I have anything I hear reserved, but we can, of course, go check and see. No, I don't. So I have none there. So I just have basically some in use deployed. Now, the idea behind that, and the reason I'm bringing this up, and especially like one of these fields, is if you're automating IP addresses and you're building in a system and you want to be able to bring in subnets that are enabled and have this ability, you can then say, okay, here's a request, and I want to go look up for any subnets in this site that support VLAN whatever. And that VLAN whatever could be an API-enabled subnet, or you might do it this way. And show me all the subnets in this container that are API-enabled. And it would give you a list for subnets that you could use for a client. And so then you could say, well, here's a subnet, and then you could go get that detail and pull back some other information about it and make a choice. So if you then want to pull back the stats or do something else, you could then pipe it into another API and just simply go in, take a look at the block, pull the stats back, make some decision about what you're going to offer back to the client, and then either make that decision and assign the IPs from it or do something else through your script or workflows. And I keep mentioning workflows because I'm going to get to the cloud automation appliance where I want to try and put a lot of this together. And we're going to go ahead and put things together, chain these APIs so that we can just do a very simple post like you might have through ServiceNow and do it all. So that's my goal of getting you there. But to do that, we got to understand some of these values here. So that's one. So you have API enabled. Now I could also do something like VLAN, and I'm going to see if there's VLAN ID, and it could be contains 1111. Now let's see if that has anything in there. It may not be VLAN ID. Let's try this. All right, let's just verify my field before I make any more mistakes there. Okay, so it is VLAN underscore ID, and let's just see what kind of fields I might have and do the search here. And so for validation, and again, I think everybody should always test your code, always do everything in with a known set of data and validate your results. So I tend to start here a lot of times when I'm looking for like an ID. And let's say it has one in it. Okay, so I have a whole bunch of them. Let's take a 401 looks like one we could use that might have multiples here. Sure, that's a good one. So let's try this up here then again. In my Postman, I'm going to do this. I could do this in Swagger as well if you want to do it in that interface. And we can make it even. VLAN ID equals 401. Okay, and then we should get our list back. So again, now we have an array, we have some subnets, we could visualize it, and we could see these details. Now, the export function, as I mentioned previously, will provide you most of the details you need. It'll give you the user-defined fields that you could then loop through, process, and manage, or you might want to do something further, like now I have the subnet, loop through it, go out and do another API request, get the stats for that subnet using instantaneous stats, and then find out which of these subnets are best suited for this available API thing. So my whole point there too, with the API enabled, if you're doing this and you're bringing subnets in and out, it's a way that you can go in and say, well, I want to take this out of commission, and so the next API call will just not see that subnet any longer. And that's all you have to do is disable the flag. And that can be done programmatically too. So when we think about subnet expansion and other things, and I'm going to go down this rabbit hole, then you end up doing things that you can automate. But in order to automate this, and I'm gonna harp on this until we can't harp on it anymore. In order to automate data, you have to know the result. You have to know that it's consistent. What's used, not used. You can't just have subnets nilly-willy everywhere. That's not how that typically works. At least not well, and I'm going to say that. So what we've been doing in setting up policies is to enforce the ideology that when I say I want a data set and I'm down in a location that's in a facility, remote site, a data center, and so forth, when I request that address space, I can feel confident that this is the next available block and this is a best fit for that size. And if I go to a 23, it should give me another best fit. So the idea here is that build the policies, set them up properly up front. When you go through this automation, you have to test it. You have to test it with the environment, especially if you're adding, deleting subnets and doing things along that line. But once you set those policies right, you should be able to apply any one of these APIs anywhere for automated provisioning, for validation that you're going to get the next subnet, checks and balances, and other things. So that's my harp and rant. But I wanted to point out the user-defined fields. So the different types of tags and different types of fields, they have, of course, different search values and other things. And of course, you can populate these fields as well. So when we go and we start thinking about importing a device, we're then going to have an array of user definable fields that would then be included to have these values. And this is how those fields would look. Now, there is an API, as I had mentioned before, and let's see if we can call that and see if it's there. Let's go to the block, and one of these, I thought had this, maybe the child block, maybe not. Oh, here it is. So this is the initExport child block UDF. I could take this same syntax that I have right here, and I think so. And when I say I think so, and put this in our initExport, and actually that doesn't, no, I won't be able to do that. So this is actually structured a little different, that in order to use the export here, I have to basically run the initExport command without the page size so I can get this context. And I guess we'll do that real quick just to see if it works. But this should give us back our fields. So this will be my last, and I'll talk about those fields, and then that'll be it. So we'll go here. Let's just go ahead and paste our query. Let's go ahead and remove the page size. And I should get back our context. And now let's take that context to this initExport where it expects the context, and we're going to take it all the way to here, and I'm going to paste that, and that should be exactly what it's looking for. And here you go. So that was maybe quite a bit just to get that set of user-defined fields. But if you were programmatically doing this and setting up some web service that's calling this dynamically, this would be the list of fields without their values that you don't have to strip out. That's the field name tags that you would use for those values. But it's an interesting way of doing it. So again, you can programmatically do this. It's simple to do, but when you're copy pasting it here, of course, you want to start thinking about automation. And we start thinking again about the cloud automation appliance. And that's where I'm going to start moving some of these discussions into that as we move forward here. But that was kind of a short video. I wanted to point it out. The user-defined fields are a very important aspect of this automation and searching. And I highly, highly recommend that you kind of look it over and understand that structure before you just kind of jump in, so you're not mixing, matching things and policies. Enforcing a structure that is deterministic is going to be and help you in your success. It's going to be critical to helping you that success. So thanks again for joining me. I hope this was helpful. And if you have any questions, again, you have my email just about on every slide. Feel free to ask me the questions, and I'll see you in the next video.